Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, as we're all aware, Kuro Games had a pretty big drop of news for 3.0 yesterday. You can probably guess what it was based off of what's behind me on the screen right now, and that was the reveal of a brand new unit, somebody that simply has not been announced across the rest of the Star Torch Academy Lahai Roi cast. And as far as I'm aware, as of today, December 5th, they still haven't given out any details except this character's appearance. No name, no attribute, no role, nothing like that. And what I wanted to do was answer, or at least try to answer, to the best of our ability, given the resources that we've already seen in-game. Who is she? What is she? And what the hell is going on over here? Because I've been made aware of something really interesting, and you can see it in this shot. Why does she have no shadow? Why does she have no shadow? And why does she kind of look a little bit like this? Why does she look kind of like digital? Why does she look like, you know, like a little bit wispy? No other character, as far as I'm concerned, no other character has particles and stuff like that that just seem to be kind of like living on them. So without further ado, let's go ahead, answer some of these hard-hitting questions, or at least get as many details as we can when it comes to this mystery unit. One of the big things that we know about 3.0 and one of the big things that we know about Lahai Roi is that we're going back to Star Torch Academy. And one of the big things about Star Torch Academy is that it's ran by this institution or this faction called the Space Trek Collective. And as we all know from some of the previous drip marketings that we've seen of some of the Space Trek Collective members, for example, Mornier is just one of them. Let me go ahead and actually get to her splash art real fast, and then you'll be able to see some of the things that they're all about. She's a Space Trek Collective researcher and a professor at Star Torch Academy. She is unwavering in the pursuit of her dream to surpass the limits of space-time and see the world beyond in all of its splendid beauty. And that's what you see across pretty much all of the advertising for Lahai Roi, right? They're over here, they're talking about how they're the shepherds of fire, they're the sun chasers, they're going out, they're trying to do all of these crazy things, usher in a new future of light. That's all stuff that the Space Trek Collective is trying to do. And a big thing about the Space Trek Collective is why they're even doing research in the first place. They built Star Torch Academy as a way to further their research in Lahai Roi. And the reason why they're in Lahai Roi is because of one thing: advancing methods of space travel by studying this thing called the Exostrider. And that's for the benefit of all civilizations. So, the Exostrider is something that's a huge focus for 3.0. And it actually gets featured in this trailer, where you see things like where the seed of civilization is buried. That's the head of the Exostrider. You can see the shoulders and stuff over here, right? That's the head. This is the body. This is like the back. Let me just play it.
Where the seed of civilization.
So yeah, you can see
buried.
it's like a back, right? It's kind of like going down. You can see like the spine over here, the lats, all that sort of stuff. That's a giant mecha. And I think this line over here, where the seed of civilization is buried, is super important. Because guess what, guys? This thing is called the slumbering Exostrider. Something is supposed to wake it up. And this is where stuff starts getting a little bit interesting, right? This has just been like a gigantic lore dump so far. We were originally, right? The topic of this video was to talk about this character. And this is my take. After I've given you all of that information, I think that she is actually the spirit of the Exostrider. I think she's what makes the Exostrider wake up. And my actual take is that she's going to be a playable unit, right? And her kit, she's going to pilot this thing. Does that make sense, ladies and gentlemen? Because one of the big goals, or one of the big things about Lahai Roi, is the fact that this region, covered in snow, all of that, right, with all these different factions, it has no Sentinel. There's no Sentinel in Star Torch Academy. There's no Sentinel in this forest, in the Bjarter Woods. It's protected entirely by, or was protected entirely by, the Exostrider. And what does a unit like this, with this level of intrigue, this level of mystery, doesn't she kind of remind you of how Cartithia was kind of a little bit hidden, then turned out to be the Sentinel's resonator later? What if she is the Exostrider's resonator? We're getting that preview right now, and that's essentially going to be the Sentinel resonator of the region. Except this time, it's a bit more of a artificial, man-made. Some could not call it man-made because this thing actually came from outer space. It's like a mechanical Sentinel. And this is where the story is going to get a little bit crazy. This is where stuff is going to be a little bit loosey-goosey. We all noticed over here, or probably not all of us noticed, she basically doesn't exist in the real world, right? She exists in, I guess, some kind of like alternate reality for herself, because there's a reason why she's just able to get on the back of Linnea's motorcycle, right? Walk around, go to all these places. Nobody can actually see her other than Rover. That's actually why she's in the back of the classroom, because this is an empty seat that nobody else is in. She's not, like, actually visible. And Rover's the only one that can look at her. Who else was somebody that Rover could only look at? Cartithia. In version 2.0, we were the only ones that could look at her. And naturally, this is where I think some of the links are going to start coming in. I think Rover is probably related to the Exostrider in some way. They are probably one of the pivotal reasons for why the Space Trek Collective even settled down in Lahai Roi in the first place. And I think that's why they're one of the only individuals that's able to see her. And this is how I know this is probably what's going to happen. We all remember at the end of the 2.7 quest, right, ladies and gentlemen? We all remember at the end of the 2.7 quest. This was the takeover here from Schwarzlock, recapping everything they've done, Fraxidus, as a faction. Our goals in Jinzhou and Ridosita have fulfilled: a Thernodian's resonator, an artificial Thernodian, and a second resonance awakening. At this point, when we know that the goal of Fraxidus is to strengthen humanity, to make humanity as strong as possible, to be able to take on bigger threats.
Sita have been fulfilled.
Now, we've seen all of that. Take a look at this next line. Sorry, Schwarzlock talks a little slow. It takes like 30 seconds for this dialogue.
We now possess both the knowledge.
Holy shit, I forgot how slow this guy talks. Yeah, that's like a minute.
It is.
And that's the line. Next, it is time we turn our gaze to our accomplishments in Lahai Roi. Keyword, past tense. They've already been doing things there. And my take is that the Space Trek Collective and Fraxidus are actually much closer than we might have thought, because their goals are essentially aligned. They both serve the same purpose on this planet. Fraxidus kind of just does like the, you know, the shady shit to get the job done of advancing humanity to the next era. These guys are taking the more academical approach, or probably the more PG approach, right? The light and the dark side. It's a kind of like juxtaposition that everybody knows about when it comes to like advancing, you know, technology, that sort of stuff. It's a big sort of factor, right? That's why you have all those like horrific scientific experiments that actually result in something like good later on, right? Same sort of concept. We know all about it in the real world. I think that's what's happening here. And I, in my honest opinion, believe that this character is one of the main goals of Fraxidus. One of the main goals of Fraxidus is to have this character obtain some kind of like power because of all the past research that they've done, right? In Jinzhou, in Raguna, in Septimont, Thernodian's resonator with Cartithia, artificial Thernodian with Mia, and then second resonance awakening with Jinsei. Clearly, there's something wrong with her right now, right? That's why nobody else can see her. But with all of this research, all of this technology, all of these new capabilities that Fraxidus has developed over the past 2 versions, now they're probably going to be able to do something with her, get her kind of like in the real world, into the Exostrider. And what better person to make all of this happen than Rover? The person that's been able to have all of Fraxidus's other goals completed. And I think that what we're going to do is we're going to develop a relationship with this character. We're going to like help her out. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of stuff going on throughout the story, but it's going to be furthering the goal of Fraxidus to develop that insane power that we're going to need to go to outer space, because there are probably some crazy interdimensional threats that regular resonator and earth powers won't be able to handle. And the slumbering Exostrider, a gigantic badass mecha, probably is going to be piloted by her. I just kinda see it. It's just something to me that feels like it would make a shit ton of sense. Otherwise, I'm not really sure what the Kuro developers have been cooking up, because every single thing that we're seeing, right? The fact that only Rover can see her, she's like special to the Star Torch Academy, all of that, it feels like she's going to be important. Here are just some extra little bonus details now that should honestly kind of additionally confirm some of the theories that we have going on. It's clear that this unit is meant to be big. It's clear that this unit is meant to be the literal bombshell, right? That brings in a massive amount of hype for this version. It's clear that this unit is meant to be the Cartithia for 2.x. We all know that. They didn't advertise her. They didn't announce her at all. She's still not announced. The hype is still growing. But here's some additional proof that I know she's somebody big. She's basically a direct reference to Nanami, who is one of the most iconic PGR characters. She's a very like light, upbeat, very like happy sort of person in like a dark sort of world. She gives the same sort of vibes, right? And look at the eyes. They're pretty much exactly the same in terms of shape. Let me just get a bit of a close-up for you over here. Yeah, they're pretty much exactly the same in terms of shape. And you might have noticed that these eyes look similar to something else in-game. A radiant tide. It's literally pretty much exactly the same. And I just, you know, there's flavor text in these games, right? They don't typically show it on websites like this, so I opened up my game just to be able to look at this. Let's read what the flavor text is for a radiant tide. Maybe it'll be relevant. Above the waves, I cry out loud. Brilliant ripples, answers found. As promised, you will draw near. In radiant waves, our paths appear. I guess the main thing is that she is the only character that has literally the symbol for this on her eyes. Obviously, this is something that can be applied to every single character, but I'm gonna be real over here. When you consider the fact that the Exostrider is an ancient civilization, right? Or it's a product of an ancient civilization. It's called the Slumbering One for a reason, because it's been stuck here for potentially hundreds of years, thousands of years. And when you consider the fact that I'm saying she's like the spirit of the Exostrider, right? Meant to be its pilot. If you consider that they've basically been abandoned, nobody's noticed them for millennia. Above the waves, I cry out loud. When you consider that they've potentially been there all alone, for hundreds, thousands of years, all by themselves because nobody can see them, doesn't that make the I cry out loud part over here a little bit interesting? Because this part, above the waves I cry out loud, doesn't really seem to be relevant to any other character. These other parts over here, sure, right? It's just you're meeting on the way. But who else has had this sort of condition? Where they're desperately trying to be heard, and they're desperately trying to have somebody find them. Maybe the person that leaves no shadow. Maybe the person that literally nobody notices. Maybe the person that's just been spying, literally spying on everybody else, just looking at what they're doing because they can't actually talk to anybody. I think this flavor text is going to be pretty damn relevant. And that's my cook. That's my take. That's everything when it comes to who I think this character is supposed to be. Let me know what you all thought. Let me know if I did actually cook. Let me know if you think that I'm actually spitting or if I'm full of bullshit. Because as far as I'm concerned, everything that I've seen, my theory, it feels like it lines up. And if it actually doesn't go in some sort of way like I planned, I'm going to be real. I feel like I'm going to be a little bit disappointed. Because I feel like the plot that I've laid down, I feel like the progression that I've detailed and described, it sounds like it would be pretty fucking sick. Yeah, I don't know. I'm envisioning it right now. She just goes like full, I don't know, like hits a T-pose, right? And she hits a T-pose and then gets into the mecha and starts like slicing up. This thing has a gigantic broadsword. I forgot to mention that. Sorry, maybe that sweetens the deal. It's a giant mecha with a big fucking sword. I've got to see it in action. That's gonna be it for this one, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully that was helpful. Let me know what you all thought. Peace out.